I started understanding that there was more to me. And I felt like people were asking me to change. And I was like, but I can't. This is who I am. And it's not that I didn't love who I was, it's that it was all coming out the wrong way because I was stressed. I didn't have time. I didn't give myself space to pause. Instead of reacting, if I wish that I learned earlier that I could pause and respond versus just quickly react. Well, hello there to all my beautiful listeners of the world. Welcome, friends. Welcome to the University of Why. This is a podcast where we ask big questions about who we are. We redefine success, and ultimately we live a life that we truly love. I'm your host, Dr. Sonia Chopra, and I'm here today with the story that brought me here, right to this microphone today. Today, I want to share with you my personal story, my story of how I became a mom of three, a wife, a board certified endodontist or a root canal specialist. I save teeth for a living, and how I launched an online business. This is a story of my journey and all the things and all the feelings that I felt getting to this point right here. This is a very personal episode for me today, but it's the only way that I knew to introduce myself to you. So I hope you enjoy. I think my journey starts with thinking about a little bit of my childhood. My journey starts with being an American girl. I was born in America, but I'm of Indian descent. So my childhood felt different. I always felt different. I looked different. My culture was different. My values that I brought from my home were different than my friends at school. I had different rules. I always kind of felt like an outcast a little bit. And being Indian has really been a big part of who I am. I love it now. I think in retrospect, I was very frustrated as a child, kind of living in this bicultural life in these two societies. Like if I was in America, I didn't really fit in. And when I went to India, I didn't fit in. I looked funny. I looked different. And even if I dressed up all the same as everybody else there, people still knew I wasn't from there. And that was very interesting to me. So I kind of led this life, and I feel like I connected with a lot of people, what we call ABCDs, American born confused Daisies, that we also had the same kind of feeling. So there was a deep connection with this type of community as well. And we can crack some funny jokes and make fun of our parents with an Indian accent. But I feel like this is where my journey started, just being different. And I appreciate it now so much, but at the time it was really difficult for me. And being Indian, I really didn't have a freedom of my path to choose. My parents were very adamant that I was either a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, maybe even an engineer they would accept. But my path was pretty much chosen for me. And in my culture, arranged marriages are very common. In fact, my parents had an arranged marriage. And so they've said, these are my choices for my career. And again, in retrospect, I feel like I'm happy that I was only given those options. It kind of made things easier. I didn't have to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I picked dentistry as my career path because, well, medicine was very prominent in my family. Both my mom and my brother are physicians. But I also looked at my mom and her lifestyle, and she was on call a lot. And I didn't really want that for myself as a child. I felt bad for me when my mom couldn't make it to a dance recital. And those things were important to me. So I knew that I wanted to make sure I could be there for my children in the future if I ever were to have them. So medicine was always a big influence in my life, but I knew that I didn't want to be a physician who was on call all the time. And what's funny is I was always a dental patient. I was always at the dentist. I was born without 8 teeth. I have a really wild tooth story that one day I'll get into it. I don't think there's enough time for it in today's episode, but I was always at the dentist, and I felt like I was a chronic dental patient. And so dentistry was very familiar to me because of that. And I felt like I had this other perspective of dentistry. So I chose dentistry. Of my three options, basically, I chose dentistry as my path. And I like to think that dentistry is my arranged marriage. It really makes sense now that I look for it. It really wasn't love at first sight. I wasn't excited about dentistry. It was more of a task. It was something that I was expected to do. But one of the things that my parents taught me, because they had an arranged marriage, is this idea of commitment. And once I made that commitment to dentistry, I was committed. And I think that's what's made me successful so far. I remember there were so many reasons why I should not be a dentist. It wasn't that hard for me to get into dental school. I looked great on paper. It's funny because my mother was like, "You look good on paper," or you actually, I didn't look good on paper. Sorry, I take that back. But she felt like I could nail my interview. And so she's like, "Well, let's see if you get an interview. If you get an interview, I'm not worried, but I'm worried that you're not going to get an interview." My own mother said this to me. And she asked me, she's like, "What's going to be your plan B?" I was like, "I don't know." But I wanted to be a flight attendant. I was like, well, at least I would be able to travel with my job. So my plan B, if I didn't get into dental school, was to be a flight attendant. And I still find that funny today, but that is what my alternative was if dentistry didn't come to reality. But it did, and it knocked me on my butt. I remember my first year of dental school, I got in after all that hard work. I got in just to have one of my faculty members look at my work. I remember we were trying to wax a tooth out of like, it was a block of wax, and you had to like carve the wax block and make a shape of a tooth. Well, I'm not very artsy at all. And so my tooth came out pretty fugly and it was like crooked. And he looked at it and he just looked at me and he said, you may want to think about trying a different career path. And I just looked at him like, what? What do you mean find another career path? I worked so hard to get here. Like, I don't have another option. Like, do you know who my parents are? And that moment really hit me hard. And I couldn't believe this person had so much doubt in me. And, I'm actually, once again, thankful for that moment because it was kind of a wake up call. It was an awakening at that moment. And it felt like a setback initially, but then it became like the spark to do better. Like, how can I take this commitment and really run with it? So I ended up doing pretty good in dental school. Maybe my teeth that I carved out of wax were pretty ugly, but that's okay. There's so many other things in dentistry that I could do, which I wish that this man told me instead of try to knock me down. And so I eventually finished dental school. I did great, kind of finished at the top of my class. And then I noticed, okay, this safety net of dental school is going away. And I started to develop this sense of fear in me. And I started to even get a little bit depressed after dental school was starting to finish. I knew that I still needed that safety net of school to kind of protect me because I didn't really feel ready. I don't think I had the confidence yet that I really deserved and desired. And so I decided to do a 1-year GPR residency. I had this dying sensation to move to New York City. So I made sure that I landed in a hospital that was in New York City. It was a very exciting time. It was also bittersweet. I was leaving a relationship that I had in dental school. It was a very soul-centered relationship, but it was something that I had to break away from. And I moved to New York City all alone. Every move that I made in all these parts of my life, I moved by myself, which again, in retrospect, I'm like, how did I do that? But I was so brave and I didn't even realize it. So I moved to New York City. I started a general practice residency. I immediately met somebody new, which was kind of crazy. I was not intending that at all. And I remember like driving on the Brooklyn Bridge because I actually lived in Brooklyn, New York. And I remember being on the Brooklyn Bridge and just looking out and being like, wow, I'm finally doing something for me, something that I decided to do. Like moving to New York was such an exhilarating experience. And I remember that energy of feeling like I'm finally doing something for me. So my residency was super fun. And then I loved New York City so much that I stayed in New York City for a few years and I worked as a general dentist. And life was hard as a general dentist. I had some crazy jobs. I actually had 9 jobs in the span of 2 years. I had one job where I was the dentist, the hygienist, the assistant, the front desk. I did all my own billing. I did all my own scheduling. I did all my own x-rays. I did all the cleanings. I did all the dental procedures as the dentist would do, but I did every other aspect of the office. So it was difficult, but I learned a lot. I learned in New York what I wanted for myself in my career and what I didn't want. I wasn't making much at all. I was making $400 a day as a dentist in New York. And I say that it's not much because my rent was $2,100 a month. So at the time, it was not much for me. But I loved every second of it. And it was really a great part of my journey. But I started to change in New York. I started to become an adult, and the adulting kind of stressed me out. And I got a little terrified again. And so I was like, okay, well, I still wasn't feeling great about dentistry. I didn't love what I was doing. I was kind of mediocre at a lot of things, and I knew that I wanted to be good at one thing. So I decided to apply to go back to school because I have this sense of safety in school as well, if I'm being honest. And I applied to go back to another residency, and this was an endodontic residency, and it's to learn how to do root canals. And it was another 2-year program. And now I'm dating somebody new. He ends up being my husband now, which is kind of fun and crazy. There's a whole nother story behind that. And one day I'll have my husband on the show because he is a big part of my life and he's got a lot to share too. So you're going to see him a lot and we'll talk about our story on another episode. Leaving New York, first of all, I ended up applying for this endo residency. Once again, I got in. These things weren't hard for me to get in. What was hard for me was the process once I got in. And at the time, my husband, he wasn't my husband, he was my boyfriend, but he was very non-committal. And I was like, well, I really need to do this for me, for my career, because dentistry still was not making me happy. It was still a struggle for me. And I felt like I needed more education to make me confident. So I applied to endo. I got in. I ended up going to Nova Southeastern University, which is in South Florida. So it was like this absolute antithesis of New York City. It was actually what my body needed. I needed sunshine. I needed ocean. I just needed nature. I was kind of done with the concrete jungle and I moved to Fort Lauderdale by myself again. And it was great. It was refreshing. It was waking up to the ocean and the sunshine was exactly what I needed. And 6 months into my residency, my boyfriend asked me to marry him. And we decided we're going to be committed. And so we had a long distance relationship. It was very challenging, but at the same time, exactly what I needed. I needed the space to work hard in my program. I needed the space to study and read all the literature that was required of me. I would study really hard Sunday night to Thursday night, or maybe Thursday afternoon. And then he would fly in, like he would come to Florida because who wouldn't want to go to Florida, right? And we would spend the weekend together and then he would leave. And then Sunday night, I would be back to studying. And so that was my life for 2 years and it really worked. And I had great friends in this building that I lived in and just had a great time. I learned really how to manage my time really well so that I could work hard and I could play hard. And that has become a big part of who I am. So Florida for me was really understanding and allowing that I wanted something different, that I wanted something slower, that I wanted more sunshine, that I needed that aloneness again. And so once I was done with graduating from my residency, I was moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, which my husband is from, and his whole family is here. And once again, I don't know anybody. So every few years in my life, I would leave where I was at. I don't think I stayed someplace longer than 4 years. And I would just keep moving, moving, moving. Actually, right now, I haven't moved in 16 years, and it's kind of crazy because I was so used to moving every 2 to 4 years. So after my graduation from my endodontic residency, my next destination was Charlotte, North Carolina. And when I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, it was 2008 and the economy tanked. And that was not good alignment with trying to find yourself a job after you graduate. So I couldn't find a job. There was nobody hiring for an endodontist. People's practices slowed down. So there was no room for another person. So my only option was really to do a startup. And so I looked around town. I found what I felt energetically really matched me. And I started my own practice. I had no idea what I was doing. I had this shell of a space and I had to go through this construction. And again, this crazy wild ride of opening your own practice. And, you learn the dentistry to a little bit, but you still don't know it really well, right? I had another 2 years to just learn how to do root canals, and I felt like I was pretty good at it, but I had no idea how to manage patients, really, patient behavior. I had no idea how to manage a team. I had no idea how to file insurance. There were so many other things that came with the job that I just had to learn on the job, and learning all that was part of my journey. And this is kind of where life kind of slapped me in the face. And this is where the hustle began. And this is where, to be honest, I forgot who I was at this stage. So I opened my practice in 2008, and the role of myself completely changed. I went from just being Sonia to being a wife, to being a boss, to being a leader, and very quickly thereafter to becoming a mother. And all of that happened so quickly that I really forgot who I was. And I went into this, I don't know what it was. I can't even explain it. I almost walked through life for about 8 years blind, just kind of like a robot, just doing all the things that were expected of me, just trying to succeed. It was a constant hustle. And in 2010, I had my first child. And that's another episode when your initiation into motherhood is not what you expected. That's definitely another episode. But I had some issues with my daughter. She was in and out of hospitals for the first 6 months of her life, pretty much. And she's great now, but like juggling all that while trying to maintain a practice and just keeping your shit together is not easy. And so I just started to become this person who was reacting through life, and I didn't even realize it. And I lost myself. And I would say that was like my 30s. My 20s were a blast. I had so much fun. My 30s was all hustle and losing myself. And then my 40s has been my rebirth. And 40s have been fun, but I have a feeling I'm going to love my 50s the most. So let's fast forward to 2016. I am now a mother of 3. I hate my body. I look frumpy, like I've had 3 children. I am just not happy with myself. I'm not happy with my relationships. I have these kids that I don't really know if I'm parenting properly. My marriage is kind of stale. You know how it gets. There's a lot going on. And from the outside, everyone is like, wow, she's so successful. She has this amazing husband. He's handsome. They're this beautiful couple. Look at her children. They're so beautiful. Like her practice is booming. And I was like, yeah, I should be ecstatic. I have everything that everyone has ever wanted for me. But it wasn't enough for me. I was doing everything for everybody else, and I forgot to ask myself what it was that I wanted. I was not living intentionally. I had no vision at all. Oh my gosh. I was just doing with no guidance. And so it's crazy. Like people think, "Oh, Sonia, she's got her shit together." And I didn't feel like I did. And my relationships were really suffering. My husband and we have a good marriage, but we were definitely going through some stuff. My kids probably could have been more loved. My friendships started to break. And I feel like everybody at my office hated my guts. And that was easy for me to just kind of point my finger out to everybody. But it was really nobody else's fault but mine. And I finally realized that in 2016 that I couldn't change everything around me. I really had to start changing what was inside of me. I was kind of lost. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. And actually, where I ended up going was my car. My car was my safe spot. It was nobody else was in there. It was just me. And I was like, what can I do in here? And so I started listening to podcasts and like audiobooks and stuff like that. And there was nobody in my car that could bug me. There weren't kids screaming at me. There weren't employees screaming at me. It was just like, okay, this is where I'm safe. And I made it my university. And that's where I came up with the University of Why because of that car, my little Mini Cooper. It was my university and it saved me. It started nourishing me and it made me realize when I started to consume nourishing content. I stopped watching The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and New York City because it wasn't nourishing me. It was just creating more conflict in me. And I started really listening to things that nourished my soul. And I realized that the reason I was broken was nobody else's fault. It was really my fault. I was the common denominator. I was the reason why my employees were quitting. I was the reason why my children were crying. And I couldn't break out of that energy. And slowly I started to learn. And I say slowly because it was very slow process. I had my first awareness at 2016. I had a moment of complete burnout where I remember literally being on the floor one day and just being like, why am I so upset? Why? I have everything. I have a house. I have a practice. I have a marriage. I have beautiful children. I have everything. But this is not me. And it's like it just wasn't my energy. It was crazy. And I started to ask questions and I was like, why do I feel this way when I have everything? This is supposed to be the pinnacle of everything. And it didn't feel like that. And so my burnout really it was my awakening. It was a slap in the face. It was like, wake up, girl. You can change this. And so that's what I did. And again, it was a slow change. And I'm still evolving, still changing, still asking big questions, still in my University of Why. I love my car. So if you ever see me zipping around town in my Mini Cooper, know that I'm having a good time. But I really started to understand myself in all dimensions. I started understanding that there was more to me. And I felt like people were asking me to change. And I was like, but I can't. This is who I am. And it's not that I didn't love who I was, it's that it was all coming out the wrong way because I was stressed. I didn't have time. I didn't give myself space to pause. Instead of reacting, I wish that I learned earlier that I could pause and respond versus just quickly react. That's probably one of my biggest lessons, and I'm sure we'll talk about that one day. But I started to really understand who I was. I started to learn things like the Enneagram, my human design, my gene keys, my zodiac, a little bit of astrology. I started to get a little bit more spiritual. I started to do other things like read books that really helped me manage my business. So it was like this beautiful blend of masculine and feminine that I didn't even realize I was doing. I started to go to events that were educational about different things. I stopped going to dental events because I was like, I keep learning the same thing. I want to learn something that spiritually nourishes me. So I found Mind Valley, and I started going to Mind Valley events. I started to get really inquisitive about spirituality, and I started to allow this into my life. I started to become a different person in ways, but I didn't forget about my true essence, which is really, really important. My marriage has started to shift. I will say my marriage has probably been the most sacred container. It's been rough, but it's been beautiful at the same time because my husband like really reflects back to me a lot. And I would say in the beginning, I was very, very resistant to it, but I've allowed myself to receive those reflections so much more. And it's been really wonderful. I've become this eternal student. Like, I always want to learn. Like, I'm so grateful for my burnout now. Like, I don't look at it with any animosity. I actually have a very deep respect for it. And although it was painful, like, I really, really did need it. And I realized I wasn't happy and that I had more purpose in my life. Like, I was in this practice. And again, I feel like I identify with dentistry, with my practice so much because it was for that long what people define me by. And so you'll probably hear that come through a lot in this podcast because I learned how to be a business owner. I learned how to be a female entrepreneur. Like, if I didn't have it, I wouldn't have really found my purpose. So while I was practicing, I also started teaching. I started to lecture around my town and I started teaching people how to do root canals better. And then I realized I'm like, wow, like I'm so confined. I'm so confined into these four walls of my practice and Charlotte, North Carolina. What can I do? I just felt this burning passion in me that was like, oh, how do I help people more? And then I birthed this idea called eSchool, which is an online endo educational course for dentists that teach dentists how to do better root canals because there's a huge problem. You only need to do 2 or 3 root canals to graduate dental school, and then you're free to do it in the world. And now we have this misconception that root canals are toxic because, well, dentists weren't given the resources to do them the best that they can. They're doing the best that they can, the best that they were taught. They have no, ill like intentions. They think they're doing the best that they can, but they just were never given the resources. So I started this online program. And this program was actually where I started to understand like I can unleash this passion, this energy. And it actually allowed me to, even though it was almost like double the work, it's like a second job. It created this space for me that, okay, now I can actually empower my team at the office. I want to empower them because if I do that, I'm actually going to create more space for myself. So I started pouring my heart and soul and love into my people at the practice, and I started to build them. And then once I built them, I was able to create space for myself and now work on this passion project of mine. And then that started to have legs. And I turned this side hustle into a full on online business, which I can't believe that's happened. But what's crazy is that I've been able to do that, but be more of a mother to my children. Like, we just had a snow day yesterday, and I was so grateful that I don't have to stress about, okay, who's going to take care of my children while I'm at work. Now I'm home, I'm with them, and I don't have to stress. So it was really, I just really listened to myself, my body, my feelings, and I allowed it to guide me to this idea. And then I birthed this idea, and then that idea has legs, which is kind of crazy. And I said to myself, I make a commitment again that I'm not going to allow this idea to take away from me providing for my family, both from a revenue perspective and both from a love perspective. I've created more time for my family. I made sure that I didn't lose any revenue at the practice. So I found a way. It just found me from working 5 days a week at my practice to working 5 days a month and not losing a drop of revenue, which is crazy to me. And all along, I created this avenue for me to really make dentistry something that was forced upon me my own. And I think that is one of the craziest gifts I've given to myself, and I'm so happy about it. And I can't tell you how much I love that. And I just listened to this intuition that guided me. And it was 2018, and I launched it in 2019. And then COVID hit in 2020, and we were all forced to close our practices for a short amount of time. But that gave me time to really put some more energy into this program that was now online, and everybody became online. So it was like, how did I have that crazy intuition to know to do that at that right time? It's all part of the journey. And now I trust it. I totally trust it, which is crazy. And as I'm learning and I'm teaching people and I'm changing my whole way of life, I've learned so much, and I've learned so much more about myself. And I can't forget about the time where I felt stuck and I knew nothing. And that's what has brought me to this microphone today, because of remembering where I started on this path. And I think that's where I fit into this world. I feel like that's my purpose, is to help those people who feel stuck, that are kind of at the beginning of their journey and want to break free. So my lessons in my life and my journey are not just about dentistry. They're about really learning who I am and my soul purpose. And I'm really, really excited to share all the things that I've learned and bring in teachers from all over and friends that I've really connected with, that have helped me along my path, that I really hope their stories and their lessons help you too, and help you answer the question why. I want all of us to feel like young children asking that question, why? Because if we really think about it, everything that's happening to us in our lives, all the events are just reflections of us. So if you feel me, if you feel this new beginning for me and you're excited, like I've decided to give myself so much grace. This is my first episode. I can't wait to see how I grow in this. I can't wait to see how my eventual studio aligns up. I can't wait to see the kind of people that I meet along this path. I can't wait to see my evolution. I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to hear from you. I would love it if you take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, tell a friend about it. Just help me get the word out. This is the beginning of a new chapter in my life, and I'm really excited that all of you, my friends, are here to share it with me. I have allowed myself permission to show up in the way that I need to show up. Sometimes my hair might not be done. Sometimes it may look crazy in the back. I allowed myself to start from somewhere with this podcast. And that's something that I would never have done in the past. And so already I am more evolved and more just happy about what's about to come. So I want you to think about your journey. Where have you been? Where are you now? And where do you see yourself going? What lessons have really shaped you? What reflections have you seen that are showing up right away in this conversation? I would love to hear your thoughts, and I can't wait to speak with you more. And I want every one of you to be grateful for every step in your path. Thank you again for joining me today. Once again, I'm Dr. Sonia Chopra, and this is the University of Why.